Kelly and Meg here from the Women in Horror Film Festival. Meg, who are you excited to meet or see, or who have you already met or saw and it was amazing?
Well, I've already met some amazing filmmakers. I'm really excited that the Soska sisters are here because I watched American Mary the other day, and it was such an amazing horror movie. Also, gosh, there's so many amazing people here. People from Nightmare on Elm Street. So yeah, it's just there's so many up and coming filmmakers too. So there's people who have been around in the industry forever, and then new people, and I'm really excited.
There's a lot of music and a lot of hubbub going on, if you cannot tell. So we are so excited to be here in Peachtree City, Atlanta. Oh, you know what we're really disappointed about is that Greg Nicotero is actually going to be filming The Walking Dead this weekend, like right nearby, like a stone's throw away. But he is so busy filming, he can't be here.
Yeah, he canceled, which happens a lot with these events, but it would have been cool for him to be here. I would have loved to have met him. But yeah, this is such a cool event, and we're so excited to be here. And I don't know, I've heard a lot of people say they were like really inspired by the party that we went to last night, because there was just so many people who are excited about making not only horror movies, but making movies about women by women.
Yes, it's so amazing, and yeah, lots of cool people. So we will be posting all sorts of photos on our social medias, and we can't wait to tell you more about it. First of all, the place where this festival was, it was in Peachtree City, outside of Atlanta, in Georgia, and it was absolutely beautiful. We drove in to where the hotel was, and the trees enveloped the road, and it was like we were at camp because there were trails to walk from building to building, and it was amazing. And we had sort of a camp experience because you got to know everybody, and at the end of the weekend, we had made new friends, and it was sad to leave. A couple of highlights: we went to the VIP party on Thursday night and got to see a lot of the filmmakers, some of the celebrities, and they had a DJ, and we danced the night away drinking horror-themed drinks. Throughout the rest of the festival, there were films shown, and vendors were set up, and there were panels to talk to filmmakers and some of the celebrities and ask questions and get to know more about women in the industry. One of our highlights for Horror Rewind was that Lisa was able to give away one of our horror-themed cocktails. It was actually based on Dark Night of the Scarecrow, and it's called Night Harvest. If you haven't tried this drink yet, you have to try it. Lisa did a virgin version and left out the alcohol, but it was apple cider, pumpkin pie spice, a little bit of vanilla, and I'm probably forgetting something, but it was absolutely delicious. It was a hit, and even without the alcohol, what a wonderful fall drink to try. Make sure to check out our social medias, and we have been sharing photos and some of the swag that we picked up and some of the items that we bought from other vendors. What a great weekend.
Hi Meg. Hi Kelly. Hi horror friends. Lisa here. This week I've made for you a drink inspired by the Dark Night of the Scarecrow, which I would like to call Night Harvest. Why I've chosen this harvest theme for you, scarecrows, I like to think, protect crops, protect harvests. So when I think scarecrow, I think things like pumpkins, corn, apples even maybe, right? So these are some of the things we're going to find in our drink today. First, we're going to start with some pressed apple cider, some bullet bourbon, we love this stuff, some vanilla extract, some pumpkin pie spice, and an orange. Now, why I chose bourbon for this cocktail. Something that I think is a fun thing to know is that all bourbons are whiskeys, but not all whiskeys are bourbons. And one of the core components of that is all bourbon must be at least 51% of their mash made of corn. So here's our corn in our cocktail. Let's get going. So we are going to start with our orange. Very simple. Grab a peeler. I just want a little bit of zest. So I'm going to peel off just about this much. Ta-da. And with this, I am going to give it a good twist, and it just sort of mists the inside. I want to go all the way around the rim. Done. Next, we are going to take in our shaker 1.5 ounces of that pressed cider, 2 ounces of that good bullet bourbon, just a very small amount, maybe like 3 drops of our vanilla extract, and finally, just a single little dash, just like one and done on the pepper. Pumpkin pie spice. It's pie, it's cool, it's everything I want right now. And I want for the weather, and I want for you. Cheers to your night harvest.
Okay, we are at the Women in Horror Film Festival, and we have met a lovely person across from us, Christine Ramirez. And why don't you tell us what you do?
Hi, I am a special effects makeup artist in the film industry of 20 years. I work on feature films as either the key artist or department head. Most of my films are horror-based films. I'm known for my realistic gore work. That's kind of what I do. Prosthetic work, gore, all the blood, all the guts, all the really cool, gross stuff. Yeah. I also have a children's clothing line called Creepy Kids by Ramirez FX and Design, and it is based for newborns up to children 10 to 12 years old, and it's all horror themed with a horror patch. So when your little monster outgrows their onesie or their dress, you can take that patch off and sew it on another item for them. So
it's so perfect. I've got to interject here because both of my kids love horror, and even if the parents love horror and the kids don't even know what it is yet, you cannot find horror-themed clothes for kids. And so this has been perfect. I was able to get my daughter a Jaws-themed dress and my son a Friday the 13th themed shirt, and it's going to be perfect. So what inspired you to make this line of clothing?
Again, same thing you said. Okay. There was nothing for children out there. Every con that I went to, every convention that I went to, looking online, they might have a couple of Walking Dead themed things, but nothing really hardcore, especially the 80s slashers, what I grew up with. So I just decided to do that, and it's really taken off. It's nobody else has children's clothes. And then we just came out with the battle vests this year. Yeah, and they're all studded out with the patches like the old 80s heavy metal jackets.
Now, where can people find these clothes? Do you have a website, or do you have to find you at your conventions?
No, I do have an Etsy website, and it's Ramirez FX and Design .etsy.com. I'm also on Instagram at Creepy Kids is the IG handle, and you can also find it on Facebook, again, Creepy Kids.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind talking a little bit about some of your makeup work, what movies have you worked on, and talk to us about how you got into the industry as well.
Well, some of the recent movies that I've worked on, I was department head for a horror feature film called Horror Show that was filmed here in Atlanta. I also was key effects artist for a movie that was also filmed here in Atlanta and Los Angeles called The Vault. It is out in theaters now. It's also on demand. James Franco is a lead in the movie. Tara Manning from Orange is the New Black and Francesca Eastwood are the 3 leads, which Francesca's Clint's daughter, and they were really lovely to work with. I worked on Hidden Figures, did all the hand prosthetics for the Tupac movie. There's a new movie coming out called Office Uprising, and that's a horror comedy. So that's another film that I worked on. So those are some of the films that I worked on here in Atlanta based, and I also work out of Los Angeles as well when needed. Mm-hmm.
I know when I was in first grade, it's when Michael Jackson's Thriller came out.
Right.
And they had the little documentary about how they did the makeup, and John Landis directed it, and American Werewolf in London.
Right.
And the first thing I ever wanted to be was a special effects makeup artist. And I'm so sad that I didn't fall through because I think I love it, but I still can, right? Yes. It's not too late. But I want to know what inspired you to go into this line of work, and also maybe some horror movie memories.
Okay. So my father and I, we always watched horror movies as a kid. I mean, I was a young kid, 4 or 5 years old. And he would never show my sister the movies, but it was weird because it was just our thing. It never scared me, and I always said, I want to learn how to make monsters for a living. So basically, I was going to go to school out in LA after high school, and I got pregnant at a very young age. So I was 19. So I had to stay behind. I was in South Carolina at the time, and I started in beauty. I was key artist at NBC for a long time, and beauty's great, and it's good to know both things, but my heart is in effects, and I said, I've got to get back in effects makeup. So started to learn the shop side of things, the molding, the casting, running silicones. I was pretty knowledgeable about out of the kit stuff, but the shop stuff is what I had to really work on. So I was back and forth from Atlanta to Los Angeles and working on that, and just really worked on low budget films. And I still love the low budget horror films because they're so fun, because you can do so much and you can really push the edge with the low budget stuff. And just kind of got my name out there, and word of mouth and showing my work, and things just kind of, went from there.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Yesterday, Christine did a panel on some effects and did a wound on a model's arm, and it was amazing. So I'm going to make sure to post the photos, so check out the Horror Rewind social medias to find those pictures, and maybe we'll find some other pictures to share of Christine's work. But what advice would you give to people looking to become or work in the industry of special effects makeup?
Schools are good in a sense, and in a sense they're not. I think you learn more if you do an apprenticeship at a shop with a pretty well-known artist. It's a lot of hard work, but you have to be very dedicated, and the film industry is very long, grueling hours. So if you're used to a 9-to-5, this line of work really isn't for you, because we are on set some days 16 hours a day, if not more. But, if you just get an apprenticeship somewhere, or Stan Winston is a great online school. I can't say enough about his online school for people that are really wanting to learn. And Stan has everything from airbrushing to molding to sculpting to out of the kit effects. It's just, I can't say enough. So rather than watch those YouTube videos, which is a horrible thing to do for an effects artist, please go to Stan Winston and learn that way if you can't afford school.
Yeah, perfect. Great advice. So is there anything else that you would like to mention or plug or bring up about working in the industry or women in the industry? We're here at the Women in Horror Film Festival. Anything else that you can think of?
Well, this festival has been so fun. I've met you and your friends, and it's just been a great weekend. And to have something for women, for us, is really special, especially in my industry, in the effects industry. It used to be all males back in the 80s, 90s. It was very male driven, and it still is, but there's more women coming out and working, in the effects industry. It's not a glamorous job. You're on the floor breaking molds and getting bloody, and it's not all glamorous, but more women are coming aboard, which is just fabulous. And I think this whole Women in Horror just brings us together, and it's just an empowerment thing for us to keep going and doing, what we love in the horror industry.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Hey guys, Meg here. So I want to share my thoughts on the Women in Horror Film Festival. I've never been to a film festival before, so it was a really cool experience, and I felt so included and welcomed by the film community, because I'm definitely more in the podcast/author community, but I definitely felt very welcome there. So I would recommend, if you guys get the chance, to go to any sort of film festival. Of course, this one took place in Atlanta, and it will happen again next year. So if you're in the area or close by, I would definitely recommend it. So my only regret is I didn't get to see a lot of movies. I got to see Ruin Me, which of course we discuss. That was a great film. It's a female-driven piece, and it has a great concept. Not to mention, it just looks like a theater movie. It looks like a high-budget movie. So I think they really achieved that.
And I also got to watch some short comedy, horror comedy films, which is really cool too. So my thoughts, it was so neat to be there. They had vendors selling amazing things. I traded my books with a couple of vendors so I could get their amazing art. And also, oh my gosh, there were celebrities there. Heather Langenkamp was there. Amanda Wyss, also from Nightmare on Elm Street. This is perfect. I don't know if you can hear that. There's like crows cawing in the background. It's like as if they know I'm talking about women in horror. I think the best part of the whole thing, though, and it was run by Vanessa and Sam, they're amazing. The best part, though, was I was just really inspired as not just a creator, but a female creator. I feel like there's a place for us in the horror genre. That's always something that's really been close to my heart. It's something that I'm passionate about. And if you guys are filmmakers or authors, or screenwriters, whatever, and you have some short films, feature-length films, screenplays, and you'd like to talk about it at Horror Rewind, please get in contact with us. You know, a big part of what we want to do is highlight not just females, but also scripts about females, stories about women and people of color. We feel passionately that there's so many voices that need to be heard in horror. So we want to hear from you. Email us, and we could interview you. We could highlight whatever your art is, whatever your medium is, as long as it's not, racist, homophobic, sexist, all those kind of things. Then we would definitely want to share with our listeners about your work, because, like I said, it's what we're passionate about. So I guess in the end, the best thing about the Women in Horror Film Festival was that I felt inspired, and I just kind of I came out, even though I'm not a filmmaker, I came out like feeling as though I could just like go make an amazing film. So I think that's a success, and here's to another year. I'm excited to go next year. So you guys check out Women in Horror Film Festival.
My name is Dave Palomero. I'm the director of Murder Made Easy.
My name is Jessica Graham, and I'm the lead actress and consulting producer on Murder Made Easy.
This is Tim Davis. I'm the screenwriter of Murder Made Easy.
I noticed that there were quite a few references to Agatha Christie's Mousetrap, which also has a great twist, as Murder Made Easy does too. What sort of books and plays and movies influenced this film?
The main influence for this movie, Murder Made Easy, was Hitchcock's Rope. It's one of my favorite films of all time, and I always wanted to do like a one-location murder mystery, with these really long takes. I was just really fascinated by the way Hitchcock did that movie, and I think it's really, really well written, really well acted, so that was the biggest influence. There are a number of other things that we were influenced by: Death Trap, Sleuth, sort of like clever twist and turn kind of murder mystery, and definitely Agatha Christie, 10 Little Indians and Murder on the Orient Express. Watching those films, I think, really helped Tim and I to sort of really like lock in the script and figure out the tone of the film and how to kind of like do playful dialogue and things like that. So yeah, those were the biggest influences.
Christie's Mousetrap, I remember seeing it like several times in high school. It's like one of the standard Christie plays, and as a fan of a lot of British materials that Dave and I both are, like Jeremy Brett's Sherlock Holmes and mysteries like that, I'm quite familiar with a lot of British stuff, and a lot of British actors always talked about wanting to get the Mousetrap because it usually ran for several years. It's just one of those pillars. So it seemed a good thing to give a nod to. When we made the agreement to work together, Dave actually handed me a stack of movies and said, "You have to watch these. This is the tone. This is what we're going for." It was incredibly helpful to me. Some of those movies included Rope, Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express, and Sleuth. And I listed them in that order because that's the order I watched them in. And it's interesting, I put off Sleuth for a while because it was like 2.5 hours. And when we were having a little trouble with some of the twists and turns in the script, Dave was like, "No, you really sit down and watch Sleuth, and that will help you out." And it did. It was actually like, oh, I see. We're making a love letter. We missed these kind of murder mysteries. We missed these kind of movies. And it was like, boy, we haven't seen one of these in ages. Let's make one of our own.
You guys won the Indie Spirit Award at the Women in Horror Film Festival. I was wondering if you could give our listeners who are interested in getting involved in filmmaking, or authors or artists, anyone who's interested in getting into the indie horror world, do you have any advice for them?
Do what you love doing and keep doing it, and find people to work with who love what you're doing and who love what they're doing and who are passionate. It's easy to get into the lack mentality as an artist, especially in the indie world, and that really closes down creativity and makes it hard to generate ideas and hard to keep going, and that's when people burn out. So doing what you love and being unapologetic about it, and don't expect anybody to do anything for you, but do start to build that team. When you have a team, when you have people who believe in you and support you, you can start to depend on them to do their part.
Yeah, we were really excited to win the Indie Spirit Award at the Women in Horror Film Festival, which was a great festival, by the way. The best advice I think I can give is something I read from a filmmaker. He's got a production company. On his production company's website, they have a section where you can submit your script to them, to see if they want to make it or whatever. And it has a disclaimer on the website. It says basically, like, well, you can submit your script and, we may read it, but our suggestion is to make your first movie by any means necessary. And I think that really struck a chord with me. I mean, I already was leaning towards self-funding Murder Made Easy because it just wasn't going to get made otherwise. As a filmmaker, it seems like people have to see it before they know you can do it. So doing your first film, whether it's a short film or a feature, by any means necessary, whether it's a good film or a bad film, it'll show people that you actually could do it and you had the ability to visualize a story and put it on film, that you had the organizational skills to actually pull it off, which is admirable for anybody. All too often, maybe some folks, myself included, we kind of sit back and wait for a break or wait for someone. Oh, I wish someone would give me $1 million to make a film, and that just isn't going to happen normally. So I think that's really good advice.
I would throw out a few thoughts here about this. One is total commitment. You have to really commit. When we started shooting, we had a million things go wrong. We had fire alarms going off. We had a party next door that almost drowned out a scene. We had construction up the street that was messing with sound. One of the framed pictures broke. I'm not going to say who broke it. It may or may not be Dave. I don't know. No, but these things happen. I'm teasing, but my thing is, like, be ready to roll with all of the obstacles that are going to come your way, because they're coming. And then when you get through them and you wrap, it's like, oh, we did it. That's the thing. I remember the very last night, Dave and I were sitting outside like, oh my God, we did it. And that's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, just to touch on that, there were two things that really helped us out as far as making an indie film. One was picking a project that was low budget and cheap to do, having one location, having a limited amount of actors, and also having amazing people around you. Like our cinematographer Sherry, and then all the cast and crew, everybody was doing 2 or 3 jobs, and everyone had to be on top of their game to overcome these obstacles, because we didn't have the best equipment, we didn't have a lot of money, so any kind of problems that arose, you couldn't throw money at it to solve the problem. You had to kind of figure out clever ways around it, and a lot of the long takes we were doing with camera movement and stuff like that, we didn't have dolly track, we didn't have any kind of stabilization, so we had to figure out how to do these tricky shots. I think that's a good thing for people to hear, pick something reasonable you can do that's low budget, and also have amazing people around you too.
Tell us how Murder Made Easy came about.
One great example of that, having a great crew around you that are supportive and they'll do anything. We had one particular shot that was a long take of a lot of dialogue, and it kept getting screwed up because of problems of the construction outside the building, or no audio noise, or some of the actors would flub their line, and so we started getting into take 12, take 13, take 18, take 19, and it was kind of getting ridiculous, and we couldn't have the AC on because it created too much noise, so it was getting hot in there. One of the actors had the flu, so it just it was kind of insane. We were just doing this take over and over again, and I felt like I was being sadistic to the cast and crew. And finally on take, I guess it was 21 or 22, we got a good one. We got a good take. The actors got through all their dialogue in a scene all in one shot, And I said, great, let's just move on. Let's move on to the next one. And the whole cast and crew said, no, we have to do one more. We only got one good one. Can we do another one? And I was really blown away by that. I think that was a turning point. I'm like, oh, they've just been through this meat grinder and they still want to, fight and scrape and do more. And I thought that was amazing. So anyways, that's one example. I co-wrote a feature-length horror script called The House Sitter. That's more of a traditional horror film that has a lot of locations and needs a proper budget. But we couldn't find funding for the movie, and it's really frustrating. So I thought, well, I like these other kind of films, these other murder mysteries, Agatha Christie's type of films. What if I could come up with an idea for like a one location, really cheap to make film? And I was driving home actually one day from work, and I just thought of this scenario of this couple that invited their friends over one by one, and what would happen after that, what kind of like mischief and mayhem and murder would happen. And that became the genesis of Murder Made Easy.
And then that was around the time that Dave had the treatment, so we reconnected over lunch. I said, okay, well, let me take a look, and we'll go from there. And I wasn't going to string him along. If I couldn't do it or didn't think I could give it justice, I would have let him know. And then I got it home and read it and was like, oh my God, this is great.
One thing I did tell Tim when we had lunch together, I said, look, I don't know if this film will be a good film or a bad film or something in between, but at the very least, you'll have a script that you wrote that will actually be turned into an actual film, a finished film. So I thought that was a strong selling point. So it's been very satisfying to now go to the festivals and see this thing completed and done, and that I made good on my promise. Tim now is a writer who's written a film that's actually gotten completed. So
I loved the comedic scene when Joan was hauling the body up the stairs. I found it pretty funny. Why do you think horror and comedy go so well together?
First of all, that's great. You like that scene with Joan moving the body up the stairs. I guess that's kind of a spoiler, but it doesn't really matter. Whatever. It's called Murder Made Easy. People know it's going to be murder in there. But that was tricky when we filmed a couple of scenes like that where it was more physical humor. There's other kind of humor in there too, and it's very gratifying that it works. That you get the humor with that sort of more darker stuff, and that when we screened the film at the Women in Horror Film Festival, people did laugh and they did chuckle at the right moments. So that's very gratifying because I wasn't sure when we were shooting that if we were getting that sort of dark humor, especially with the physical stuff. It was tough to judge whether we were getting the right tone, and so that's very satisfying that we did. And why does horror and comedy go so well together? I don't know why it does. I think it's a very tricky thing. They always say that like drama is easier to do than comedy. Films like Evil Dead 2, which is one of my favorite films, that's got to be the best horror comedy ever made. And I think it's probably, I've seen a lot of people try to attempt the horror comedy thing, and they don't always do it. It's usually not horror enough or not funny enough. I think it's a really tricky vibe to get, but I think when it's done well, it's pretty amazing. So I guess hopefully we achieve some level of success with that.
I mean, for me, I'm always putting humor in my scripts. I think it very much makes horror in some ways more accessible, but then also makes it scarier because the laughs can lull you into a false sense of security. So those are my thoughts on the subject.
The main character, Joan, is complicated, to say the least. Why do you think it's important to tell stories about women like Joan?
For me, as an actress, as a woman, I'm really interested in roles that show all different colors and categories and flavors of human being. I think that men often get to play a lot more interesting characters than women. And as an actress, I'm really excited about exploring the shadow side of people. And so for me, playing someone like Joan is deeply satisfying because we all have shadow inside of us. The world has shadow, and if we don't explore it, then it tends to get bigger and more dangerous. And so I think it's important to talk about shadow. I think it's important to talk about villains because we all have that inside of us in some way or another. Again, I also think it's really important to create roles for women where they get to be interesting and fully fleshed out and even evil.
Tell our listeners where they can find out more about you guys and also where they can see Murder Made Easy around the country and the world.
Well, Murder Made Easy is still in its festival run. We just sort of got started in the festival. So we were at the Women in Horror Film Festival in September, and that was amazing. And that's where we premiered. And then we just played at the Flyway Film Festival in Pepin, Wisconsin, and that was incredible. So we will continue our festival run through 2018, and we hope to have, find a distributor and get this out to people so that they can see it probably late 2018 or 2019. You can find our Facebook page at Murder Made Easy. The Twitter for Murder Made Easy is at Murder Made Easy on Twitter. David Palomero, I'm on Facebook. Tim Davis, he's on Facebook. I think we're all on Facebook. Do you want to throw in your contact info?
You can find out more about me on Instagram at Jessica Clark Graham, on Twitter at DeconstructingJG, yourwildawakening.com, and jessicagraham.com.
I'm very happy to talk to people about this and the business and the stories and what have you. You can find me on Twitter at HandsomeTimmyD, and my website, which also has my email and information, is HandsomeTimmyD Express. Just in case people are wondering, wow, he's really full of his own whatever. I have a past in which I was very heavily involved in the world of professional wrestling. I was going to be a character in a wrestling promotion years ago, but that didn't work out. But I took my name with me, and it's helped me stick out from the crowd a bit. And fortunately, Dave and he calls it stubbornness, but I actually call it passion and focus and commitment. And he came up with this great idea and was kind enough to bring me on board, and we were able to work together. And I mean, we worked together. We probably developed this thing over 2 years, I think, between the first lunch and action take one, scene one, and it's been a pleasure, Dave.
And as far as future projects, well, the aforementioned horror script that I worked on that did well at Slam Dance and stuff, I'm really passionate about. It's called The House Sitter, so I'm hoping in the next few years we can actually get that up and running, and that'll be my next feature. And just from getting Murder Made Easy out there, we've gotten, we've talked to other people who want to work with us on certain things, so we're going to see if we can make that happen.
I have a book called Good Sex, Getting Off Without Checking Out, coming out on November 7th. It's being released by North Atlantic Books and distributed by Penguin Random House. Then I also have an awesome role as a mindfulness and yoga teacher in Jane Clark's new web series, Crazy Bitches. And then I've produced and act in a feature film called The Tangle, which was written and directed by Christopher Soren Kelly, and that will be coming out in 2018. We're just finishing it up. And then I am developing, as far as horror projects, I am developing a psychological thriller horror feature that I will write and direct.
I'm pitching my screenplays left and right and developing other indie movies with other directors. Don't give me that jealous look, Dave. We talked about this before. No, I'm teasing. I have a short that's kind of a Twilight Zone-esque story that also has a female lead. And again, it's just the story dictated that would be the most interesting path to go. And I'm hopeful to get that script done and maybe even shot by yours truly over the next year or two.
Okay, so us at Horror Rewind, we are very nostalgic for the video stores of our youth, and we are wondering what kind of VHS tapes you guys rented from your local video store. Is there any horror that you rented? And also, when you were there and you were renting those movies, do you think that influenced your decision to go into the film industry?
Actually, every weekend when we'd go to my dad's house, he would rent a VCR and rent us like 8 or 9 movies. And we always had to have one like National Geographic type movie, but everything else could be whatever we wanted. And I remember one horror movie that I loved, and I remember renting the VHS called The Stuff. I really remember, I can still remember the cover of that videotape. And then also when I was pretty young, we rented The Shining. And I remember I was watching it with my dad, but he fell asleep. And it's like one of the scariest parts of The Shining. And then there's a storm going on in where I live. And then right at this like really scary part, the electricity all went out. It was terrifying. And the movies of my youth absolutely influenced my choice to be in the film industry. My father was a film lover, and he could name like best picture of any year if you gave him a year. And I saw Taxi Driver really young. I saw Dog Day Afternoon really young. We were really into Star Trek and Star Wars. I wanted to be Luke Skywalker when I was like 4, and I used to pretend to be Luke Skywalker, including pretending to be unconscious and like cut open an animal and get inside of it. I acted the whole thing out. In fact, once I actually was knocked unconscious from running into a tree, and my parents thought I was just pretending to be Luke Skywalker. And then they saw the blood. And so I was definitely introduced to cinema at a young age, and it had everything to do with me getting into the industry.
Well, I also grew up with VHS, and there were a ton of horror films. I had me and my friends in high school, I had one friend in particular. His name is Dean Galanis, if he's listening. He was a big horror nerd. Hound. He loved horror, so he introduced me to a lot at that time, which was unusual and almost like risque horror stuff, like Evil Dead 2 and the first Evil Dead movie, and Cronenberg's movies, like Videodrome, things like that. And we would actually go to the college. We were in high school, but we would go to the community college, and they would have a screening of like Clockwork Orange, So we would watch all these violent and horror films, and it just really grabbed my imagination, and I just I fell in love with horror films ever since. So absolutely, seeing Sam Raimi's films and all that stuff, 100% made me want to be a filmmaker without a doubt.
I was in the video store so much as a kid. I mean, I got all the posters. They would just say, "Hey, we're throwing for a while, they would just save posters for me. I was in there like every other day. I just was a sponge for movies as a kid on VHS. As far as horror stuff, I still watch Poltergeist every year. And I know that there's a lot of like way over the top goofy stuff in it, but damn, that I will argue, and some friends of mine who love horror will tell you the first 30 minutes of Poltergeist is some of the best horror you're going to find.
Thank you, Meg and Kelly, for having us on Horror Rewind. We really appreciate it. And this has been awesome, and thanks for taking the time to watch our film and review it, and we're just very grateful.
Thank you, Horror Rewind. Thank you, Meg and Kelly. Keep listening, everybody, and keep watching horror.
Thank you so much for including me in the interview.
All right, so while Kelly and I were at the Women in Horror Film Festival, we were lucky enough to meet some of the filmmakers from Murder Made Easy. It is a film that I was so excited to watch, basically because I saw the poster and right away I just had good vibes, good Agatha Christie vibes. You guys have heard me reference Christie many times, that I love the sort of setups, and I know she errs more on the side of mystery than horror, but yeah, I love her. And so when I saw kind of the poster and the setup and the idea behind Murder Made Easy, I was very excited to watch it. It instantly just has a retro old-fashioned feel, which I was so excited about. The music right away puts you in that sort of old-fashioned feeling. And I have to mention, this movie takes place now, so it is a current movie as far as its time period, but it just has this old feeling. Tim Davis's writing, there's sort of an old-fashioned cadence to his dialogue and the costumes and the music, and there's just even the setup, I think, of a dinner party has an old-fashioned feeling. And like I said, they even reference Agatha Christie in the movie. So there's just sort of this old movie feeling to this film. That was one of my favorite things about it. It just had a throwback feel to it. Another thing that I love, Jessica Graham plays Joan, and I'm a big believer. Obviously, you guys know I go on and on about female-driven horror, but something that I really appreciated about this movie is that Joan is a complicated woman, and she's not necessarily the most moral woman you're going to find. She has a complicated past, and we see her at the very beginning. She's a widow, and I feel like sometimes these final girls that we find in horror movies, they're always sort of like the virgins, and they're perfect, and they're the volunteers, and they're these sort of women that aren't necessarily real all the time. And so I appreciated that Joan had this sort of darkness to her, and that she was complicated and interesting. That really helped me love this movie. She was just played wonderfully by Jessica Graham, and you guys need to check her out and check out her other work and watch this movie and appreciate her character. I thought she was written very well. So that was probably my favorite part about the movie. Also, it has a sense of humor. And I love when a horror movie, and by the way, I would probably call this movie more of a thriller, suspense, sort of mystery. I love when those type of movies have, you know, a cheekiness to them. And this movie definitely did. It was funny, even though there were dark moments. They lightened them up with humor and funny dialogue, and I really appreciated that. I think it's always fun when a movie can be cheeky, like I said. So what else? My gosh, there were great performances. Everyone was incredible in this movie. I believed every character. They have a filmmaker in it, which I think any sort of filmmaker would appreciate. He's sort of he could have been a caricature, but he actually comes out as a pretty funny, realistic character. Oh my gosh. And then I almost forgot, the end has a great twist. I don't want to give it away. I heard there was a twist, so I kept trying to guess. I'm just like everyone. I was watching it being like, okay, when's the twist coming? I know it's going to be, I think I know. And I was totally wrong, and I didn't guess it at all. So that was really fun. I love being surprised, and they did a really good job of surprising me. So they should be really excited about this movie. These filmmakers should be really proud. And this is when I tell you guys, you know, go out, and I encourage you to see Murder Made Easy, but I also encourage you to appreciate and enjoy other independent films. You know, we're a horror podcast. Of course, I talk more in that vein, but in any vein, you know, especially if you guys are interested in becoming horror filmmakers, we can learn so much from a movie like Murder Made Easy that has such a great script, and that even though they don't have millions and millions and millions of dollar budget, you know, we can watch how they use one set very effectively. It's so important to learn from people like this who've gone before us and done such a great job. So if you're interested in that world, please, I encourage you to watch Murder Made Easy. And even if you don't want to be a filmmaker, if you want to just enjoy horror that, you know, isn't a mass market type of thing, it's not going to be in all the theaters in the world, but we need to support all of it. You know, there's great horror everywhere. And Kelly and I are passionate about showing that to people and being like, hey, look, there are good movies that are being made that might not have that huge budget and those huge names that we've heard yet, but we're going to hear them soon, and let's get on board and support them. So I really encourage you guys to go to local film festivals and to, you know, tweet when you see a movie that you like, especially one that, you know, doesn't star Freddy Krueger. Make sure you tweet about it and Instagram about it and support the filmmakers, because, you know, I'm not a filmmaker, but as an author, I can appreciate, you know, it makes us feel good when we hear good things about the art that we're making, you know, because that's why we're doing it. We want to connect with people. So I'm just so excited about Murder Made Easy. It was a great film, and I really, really encourage you guys to go out and find it.